Hello, welcome to the SADT IA2 presentation of our group. Our group has four people. All of us have together worked on this presentation. I am Azhar and with me are my teammates Ranak Bhamra, Aadit Thakur, and Jagjit Bumrah. We are going to be presenting the module 5.3, which is implementation design. The module 5 is refinement, prototyping, and implementation. 5.1 will be refinement, 5.2 is prototyping. We are majorly focused on the implementation part of the syllabus which we have been given. The subtopics will be coming in further slides. The subtopics are format, materials, finishing, media, scale, series, and continuity. Now, we will be taking a deep dive into the design implementation phase. The designing process of an application has many different phases, out of which implementation phase is almost at the very end, and hence it is the most crucial phase of all. Because without the implementation phase, you would not have a real life object or a real life product to use, which consumers can actually benefit from. So introduction to the implementation. Once a design has been selected, it has to be implemented or produced. This is the stage when the design job is realized, completed, and handed over to the client, which I just mentioned. Implementation is the end of the design process and involves physically putting into effect many of the design decisions previously taken, such as those regarding format, scale, media, and use of materials. This stage must ensure that the design the client signed off is produced as expected with no surprises. The stakeholders are involved in the design phase, and in the implementation phase, all of the stakeholders should be satisfied with whatever we are going to be implementing. Next slide, please. Because there are many different segments of implementation, we will be going through them one by one. First will be format, then materials. These both will be covered by Jagjit Bumrah. Finishing and media will be covered by Ranak Bhamra. Scale and series will be covered by Aadit Thakur. Now I want to invite Jagjit to speak about the formats. Jagjit, please come over. Before that, if someone has any questions, please.
So, Azhar, I would like to ask where does implementation phase exactly come within the design process?
Uh, okay, so the implementation phase is the very last stage of the design process, actually. Like we come across for the very first process as planning. We plan first, we create, we know whether there's a demand for a specific thing, whether there's a demand for a specific prototype or a product. Then after that, we collect materials. Then after that, we actually analyze what we need. And according to that, we start building and prototyping for it. And after prototyping, we actually implement for it. For example, in an application, it might be coding. In a real life scenario, implementation might mean business dealing. So implementation is a very last step.
Okay, so moving on to format. Format selection is the first aspect of the implementation stage. So basically, the format within a design refers to size, shape, the layout of a design, or basically how the content is structured within a design that is being created. The format is a very important aspect within the design process, primarily because it significantly affects the user interaction and overall experience. The format of a website, for example, will be vastly different from that of a book cover or a poster. This will affect the interaction and engagement regardless of whether the message being passed on is the same or not. Key considerations for format selection include the intended use, that is digital versus print, the audience, so what the audience expects from the particular format, and also the medium for delivery. So the main factors influencing format selection, first would be the audience expectations. So the format that we select for our design should cater to the target demographics preferences. This means that whether it be geographical differences or whether it be cultural significant differences, there should also always be a difference in format that caters to the particular audience we are targeting. The next is the aesthetic impact. The format or the layout must serve the visual message intended to be delivered. So we all know when we open up the file explorer on any operating system, the layout is always the same regardless of the operating system we use. Similarly, any app drawer is the same regardless whether it is of Android, of iOS, or any other operating system. So such defined formats must be used so that some of the standard things can effectively be transferred to the user. Next, we move on to functionality. Functionality ensures the design's utility, such as mobile responsive web designs or readable font size in on posters. So basically, the format selection on a web page, for example, would focus more on making it responsive for different screen sizes, whereas for posters, it would be more according to what font size it would be readable for the user. An example is a website layout should be responsive, while a magazine advertisement focuses more on balancing visuals and text for engagement. Next, we move on to material selection. So the materials used in our design process is also a crucial part. This is the second decision in the implementation phase. And basically, material selection encompasses a wide variety of materials and substrates. For example, printed, stamped, engraved, carved, etched, cut, or painted images or other materials can be used. Different materials have different tactile qualities, and these can be harnessed by a design and felt by the recipient. For example, a product or a design could be made using wood, could be made using stone, could be made using glass or metal. All these are different materials which have the ability to transfer a different sort of message to the user. While not directly applicable in software, material selection does have a significant impact in the overall experience of a consumer. So the key elements in material selection, cost and budget is one of the key elements. We can use premium materials like glass or metal, which are expensive, but they can convey high value or a sort of luxury to the user. Environmental impact. So, in today's world, sustainable material usage is an important part, and it is especially important for brands that are being eco-conscious. So, using materials that are renewable or that can easily be disposed of is very necessary. Durability. The next key element in material selection is uh, is an element that focuses more on the lifespan of the design. So basically, if a material that we choose is may have low cost, but if it isn't durable enough, it directly affects the longevity of the design. And vice versa is that use uh, if we use a material which is durable but it is too expensive, maybe there could be target users who may not be able to afford the design in the first place. So an example for material selection would be biodegradable materials for packaging, which aligns with sustainability efforts of an electronics brand or maybe a smartphone brand.
Jagjit, could I get a real life example for both format as well as material selection?
So for format selection, a real life example could be, as I said, if you open a file explorer on any operating system, any user can directly recognize that it is a file explorer just because the format or the layout of the file explorer is always the same regardless of the operating system. Same is for app icons or app drawers, or even within apps, the layouts of a specific type of app is usually the same, which directly shows the need for a standardized layout or a standardized format. For material selection, a real world example could be in the case of smartphones. Uh, if you see, costlier phones would be made with metal and glass or a combination of both, and they show a sense of luxury to the consumer. But on the same hand, they are also less durable than ones made with plastic, because if the ones made with glass fall, they break and will have to be repaired. So I think I can pass this on to Ranak now for the next section, which is finishing.
Hi guys, I think I have to say this. I will be explaining to you today the designing finishing phase of the implementation. Finishing refers to the final touches that enhance a design's physical appeal. such as varnishing, embossing, and laminating. It is the final step before delivering a design to the client, ensuring the product feels polished and professional. Types of finishes include gloss, matte, satin, and spot finishes. Each type alters the appearance and tactile quality of the design, giving it a distinct visual texture. Refinements in finishing can significantly impact the end result of a design process. Moving on to the next slide. So here we will learn about the various types of finishing techniques. As you can see, we have the first technique, gloss or matte, which in which materials can be given a shiny reflective surface, which is known as gloss, or a subtle refined look, known as matte. Another technique is lamination, which adds a layer of protection to the design, mostly plastic, to make it durable and long lasting for use in further. And the third, we have embossing, or also known as debossing, which adds texture by raising or recessing elements on the surface of the material. For example, we can use it for things like business cards, handbooks, which use use embossing for logos to create a more tactile and premium feel. Moving on to the next slide.
Adit, I have a question actually.
Yes, Ranak.
Can you go back to the previous slide? Yeah. My question was that could you give me some more of the finishing techniques?
So that's a good question. I can surely give you that. So according to me, one more there are finishing technique known as die cutting, where technique cuts printed material into specific shapes using custom-made blade for creating intricate shapes beyond simple rectangular formats, adding a unique element. And another one is a letterpress, which printing presses design or text into paper using a raised plate. Method creates rich tactile quality by pressing into material left uninked for a subtle look. And these are a few various types of finishing techniques. Can you move on to the next slide, please? So now we will discuss the role of media in the implementation phase. Media refers to the method or platform through which the design will be communicated, including print, digital, or environmental media. The choice of media significantly influences how the audience engages with the design, making it essential to tailor the design to suit the medium. Digital media requires consideration for resolution, scalability, and interactivity that do not apply to print media. As the range of digital media varies and increases, it presents new possibilities and challenges for design thinking. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So now we have the option to choose the right medium. Like we have content delivery, like how will the media affect the speed, quality, and interactivity of the design. We have the cost and distribution problem to tackle with. Where print media is expensive to be produced and distributed compared to digital options. Then we have to look after and cater to the target audience. The different demographics consume media in different ways. Younger audiences on social media, professional over emails, and so on. For example, we can use a brand campaign, a combination of print advertisements and Instagram posts for maximum reach. Now we'll passing on the presentation to Ranak. Thank you.
Thank you, Adit. So I'll be talking about the importance of scaling. So scale context refers to the size of a design and its elements in relation to the context in which it is presented. So basically, proper scaling is a design that ensures that that it retains its effectiveness, whether viewed on a small business card or a large billboard. Maintaining clarity, readability, and impact across various sizes is crucial for successful implementation. Scaling is basically an important factor because it helps you to maintain your brand consistency, and it also helps in improving your application's effectiveness. Moving to the next slide. So, for effectively scaling, these are the following elements which we should look at. So, the first thing which we should be looking at is legibility. So, we have to ensure that a text and image are readable at both large and small sizes. Okay, like we just discussed, it should be readable even on a billboard or even like on an ad in a phone, which is going to be very small. Then technical requirements. So larger scales may require comparatively higher resolutions and sturdier materials. Visual hierarchy. Larger scale elements can create focal points, while smaller elements convey supporting details. So an example of this is that a logo must work both on a small mobile app icon and a large billboard without losing clarity, like I just discussed. Moving further. So now I'll be talking about another aspect, which is series or continuity. So series or continuity refers to maintaining a cohesive design language across multiple pieces of media or products. Designs are rarely standalone. That is, they often belong to a series, such as a brand campaign or a product line. So ensuring continuity results in all parts of the series communicating the same message and visual identity is very important. An example could be how there is a continuity in this presentation with each slide sharing the same basic design and layout, implying that the slides are a part of a series and that they're not standalone. Moving forward, so when you're implementing continuity, you have to look at the following factors. So one is that consistent elements. In this, we use the same color schemes, fonts, and logos across different formats to create a cohesive brand identity. Then we have adaptability. Designs should be flexible enough to change format without losing core identity, ensuring brand recognition across various media. Then the narrative. Each piece in a series should build upon the last, contributing to a unified story or theme, enhancing the overall message. So, like we all know that humans as individuals like to listen to stories, and if you look at most of the marketing campaigns, they always try to sell you a story. So, an example of this is that smartphone companies ensure a consistent design and brand image across their various products and offerings. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, hey Ranak, I have a question. Can you
Yeah.
give me one more example of continuity with its implementation?
Okay, so let us say that there is a brand. Let us talk about Cadbury, for example. So if you go to their website, it will usually have purple colors across, and it will have a logo which has to be maintained. So no matter if it is unless they decide to change their brand image completely, no matter how many updates their website gets, it will always have a purple color to it, and it always has since the past 10 years or 20 years or so. Yeah.
Moving forward, we will discuss the challenges in implementation. There are various challenges for every single stage of design process, including the implementation process. First challenge is balancing creative vision with practical constraints because there are various practical constraints. So your vision can't always be converted, but you have to make sure, considering all the constraints, that you do reach your vision where it actually was. Second would be media adaptation issues. The transferring designs from print to digital can lead to many challenges, which can cause integrity issues. Unexpected production changes can also take place. These may be last minute adjustments which can impact the continuity or the scale of the project. And
Uh,
lastly,
Azhar, I would like to ask if which section within implementation phase do you think is the most impactful to have a proper design process?
actually, the unexpected production changes should always be accounted for because they are not always visible. They are not always very clear what the changes will be. So having a place to actually accommodate the changes in production would be the finest idea, and it should be the most important challenge which should be addressed in your implementation phase. I guess that answers your question, Jagjit. And lastly, we will move on to successful implementation, which is also kind of the conclusion of our entire PPT. Successful implementation relies on careful choices regarding format, materials, finishing, media scale, and continuity. Balancing aesthetic goals with practical considerations ensures the design meets the client's needs and also functions effectively in its intended context as well. Iteration, flexibility, and clear communication are essential for navigating the complexity of the implementation phase. Without these, you cannot actually implement an implementation phase perfectly. And this was the conclusion. We conclude the entire presentation. And the conclusion would most likely be that the implementation phase is the necessarily the most important and the most critical phase in the entire design cycle. Thank you so much for listening to our SADT IA2 presentation.
Thank you.